In this episode of Cycling Tours, I will explore the cycling network in the northern sector of Sembawang. Hey everybody, Transit Evolution here, and if you paid attention to the video clips used in the introduction of this video, I suppose you can already tell that we are in for a terrible time. But I shall not get ahead of myself as I kickstart my journey today from Sembawang MRT station. Now for this video series, I aim to traverse every single cycling path within a cycling town. As you can tell by now, it can be quite difficult to convey the experience of an entire 2D cycling network in a video, where time flows linearly. This will be quite a problem for Sembawang because of the way the cycling network is designed over here, so there will be quite a bit of repetition in path traversal. It may get a little disorienting as I fast forward through many paths during the start of this video, but don't worry, as every path that is built as of the time of this video's recording will be covered at twice the real-time speed exactly once. I'll start with this little path segment on the west side of Sembawang Drive, one of the few within this town that was built by the town council back in 2008. One good thing about this intersection with Admiralty Drive is that it doesn't have slip lanes, and that helps to reduce the footprint of the intersection. But the intersection has a rather generous corner radius of about 20 meters, allowing for left turns at a higher speed, which could be a little dangerous. The bigger problem though is that the crossing points for pedestrians are very far out, resulting in a very tiny waiting area. You can see how this becomes a problem as I made the right turn. There's very little room for me to maneuver, and I find my bicycle completely blocking the path of pedestrians trying to cross in the perpendicular direction. Setting back the pedestrian crossing further from the intersection and reducing the corner radius will be good measures that can help make traveling on bikes here less awkward. Now give me a moment as I quickly make my way to the northern end of Sembawang Drive, where I will finally systematically traverse the cycling network. Just as a heads up for this video, I'll first travel along Sembawang Drive, and then Canberra Road, the two main roads in this town oriented in the north-south direction. This will be followed by the Canberra and Sembawang Park connectors, which are the two park connectors that span the entire length of the town. The northern end of Sembawang New Town is mostly barren land, currently still awaiting new residential developments, which explains the vast green field to my left. I think one thing interesting about Sembawang Drive is that the pavement on its east is unusually wide. Usually, the footpath of roads in this era would have a width of 1.5 meters and double as the roadside drain. But here, the pavement is much bigger, perhaps to accommodate a larger drain, big enough that the town council didn't add any pavement here, and just painted some yellow lines, thus decreeing a cycling path just like that. Beyond Admiralty Link though, the original pavement narrows, and additional concrete was used to patch things up. Space was taken from the green buffer of adjacent public housing precincts, evident by the retaining walls to the left holding back where the slope would have once continued. The cycling paths here are overlaid on top of existing infrastructure and are painted further from the road than the footpath, which means that there are plenty of opportunities for conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists. Each staircase, covered walkway, and wheelchair-accessible ramp you see to the left conceal a potential conflict point. Rumble strips are hence installed to slow cyclists down, though the paint used is unusually thick when compared to newer ones, resulting in a bumpy and unpleasant ride all the way through. Nearer to the town centre, the cycling path starts to experience more interruptions. Ironic given that the volume of cyclists will be higher on these broken paths compared to the more continuous ones further north. There's a need to be constantly alert, to be conscious of the many pillars supporting the covered walkways that serve as immovable obstacles which are in the way. But fortunately for the bus stop next to the MRT station, there are no such encumbrances. This bus stop to my right was rebuilt to be larger and longer earlier this year, perhaps because it was previously overcrowded by those waiting for the bus. Also worth noting is that it takes 5.5 minutes to get here from the northernmost bus stop serving Sembawang New Town, and there are no bus services between this exact pair of stops. The closest would be 962, but you will have to walk. I suppose this is the benefit of cycling for short distance commutes, the flexibility you get when trying to get around town to more precise places, as opposed to taking the bus. I shall now turn back northwards, this time along the west side of Canberra Road, where there is a cycling path. There is also a cycling path on the opposite side of this road, which I will cover later. Anyways, as you move along these roads, you can tell that the topography of Sembawang is not too hilly, making it fairly conducive for cycling, although it is not completely flat. On many roads, you can feel a downward elevation change as you move closer to the northern coast. I shall now travel along Admiralty Link, feeling a little awkward being so close to the fence of the new campus of Emerald Hill School. This is the problem with building cycling paths further from the road than the footpath. Moving further west, I find myself delayed a little by the access road into the Sembawang Green Public Housing Precinct, which has a staggering 1100 empty parking spots. Guess the multi-story car park in there is a little overbuilt. This is where I get to the cycling path with the most questionable designs within Sembawang. First, we have tall shrubs intruding into the clear width of the cycling path. Then it ends and I suppose I have to make a little detour around the sign. Then it leads to a shared path. Alright. Pardon me for going down an unrelated rabbit hole here, but there's a mid-block bicycle crossing that leads straight to Endeavour Primary School on my left, which is good. I would have liked to see more cycling paths that are built right next to a school, or at least leading directly to it, which may help instill a cycling culture amongst the students there, by making it more convenient to get to school by cycling. But unfortunately, with cycling infrastructure like this, it may seem too hazardous for students to ride. A cycling path completely blocked by pillars supporting a covered walkway to the left, and thin, slippery and dented drain gratings to the right. This is very dangerous and unacceptable and probably should be rebuilt as soon as possible. Note that it takes 9 minutes to get to the bus stop by bike as opposed to the 5 minutes by bus service 859, so you may want to take Sembawang Drive instead for a faster journey. I am now travelling along Admiralty Lane, where nobody lives and hence there's nothing to comment about. This cycling path would probably be the best within the estate, given the lack of pedestrian conflicts necessitating the use of rumble strips, but that also means that the path is pretty useless at the moment. After travelling through some questionable alignments in the cycling path here, right next to Masjid Asyafa'ah, I'll now return to Canberra Road, this time using the cycling paths on the east side of the road. You can see a provision to convert this 3-way intersection into a 4-way with this road stop on my left, a hint of how Sembawang New Town was meant to be even bigger, though skirting the preserved colonial bungalows to the northeast. These plans were unfortunately halted around the time of the 1997 Asian financial crisis, as housing demand rapidly plunged from the economic slump. This is why this part of Sembawang feels incomplete even today. Here, I approach Sembawang Mart, a tiny shopping center that is supposed to serve as the neighborhood center of Neighborhood 5, and perhaps even Neighborhood 4, which currently lacks a neighborhood center. This was back in the era when HDB was starting to combine marketing, eating and shopping facilities within a complex, rather than have multiple blocks like in older neighborhood centers, perhaps to optimize land use. It is good that it is fairly easy to get here, and there's even a mid-block bicycle crossing. However, such enclosed stand-alone mono-use commercial buildings really can suck out the life of the neighborhood from the street, fulfilling the material needs of the community alright, but not the social needs. Even so, with few commercial facilities elsewhere within this part of town, you can also sense an under-provision of facilities within this neighborhood when compared to the newer adjacent neighborhood 1, Canberra. Passing Wellington Circle, not to be confused with the capital city of New Zealand, I quickly find the cycling path vanish into thin air as I carefully meander beneath a narrow covered walkway leading to a bus stop. As you can see, what is depicted on the map may not always correspond with reality. I will now travel along a cycling path north of Canberra Link, flanked by retaining walls on the left and thick bushes and tall trees on the right. It feels much safer to walk here than on the footpath directly next to a road with cars and buses passing by at 50 km per hour, which is why you see many pedestrians walking on the cycling path. After passing the precinct of Montreal Spring, you may notice something interesting. Approaching the neighborhood park of Montreal Green, the housing blocks seem to curve neatly away from the road and MRT tracks. This is a hint of what the urban planners had in mind back in the 1990s. a North Shore line branching from Sembawang MRT station, curving with the blocks smoothly into Sembawang Road, before leading into a planned Simpang New Town. Unfortunately, the economic crises which I cited earlier might have also led to the same glut of unsold flats which resulted in the plans of Simpang New Town being shelved. But in return, we get a well-sized neighbourhood park here today. The path to the left leads to the Canberra Sembawang Park Connector, which I covered in the video about the eastern sector of Sembawang. But for this video, I'll make a U-turn at this intersection to the opposite side of the road, and begin covering the park connectors that stretch the length of the town, starting with the Canberra Park Connector, running beneath the MRT viaduct of the North-South line. Being envisioned to be used for recreational purposes, this park connector is super windy, weaving left and right of the immovable MRT pillars that are along the way. But still, it is an ingenious use of fringe land, reserved for the railway above. The park connector is also directly next to the Bukit Canberra Community Hub on the left, which will hopefully fill in the void left behind by the commercial-oriented neighbourhood centre, by providing facilities that fulfill the social needs of this town. For context, Bukit Canberra feature gyms, swimming pools, an indoor sports hall, childcare and senior care centres, a polyclinic, a hawker centre, and a second library for this town. And the park connector comes to an extremely abrupt end here as I approach the intersection with Canberra Road and approach Sembawang MRT station. I will have to ride slowly and even dismount and push as I pass the station, as this congested footpath supposedly serves as the park connector here. Passing Sembawang Drive, I'm travelling along the super windy Canberra Park Connector once again, which involves merging back at the junction at each minor road crossing. This happens along Sembawang Way's intersection with Sembawang Close and Sembawang Crescent, which you will see shortly. Cycling on the footpath on my right might be faster given the added distance and elevation changes, which is why many people do that. park connector to the right would continue along the MRT viaduct into Admiralty by the Woodlands Avenue 7 park connector on the vehicular bridge. But for this episode, I want to head down into the northern part of the Sembawang park connector. Many factory workers working further north in Senoko would probably be seen riding here, between their workplaces and Sembawang MRT station. Public transport alternatives include 856, 962 and 981, but still cycling is quite a favourable car-like choice for many factory workers, since the others involve waiting and walking. The route is a little hilly and windy as I travel past the similarly cursive blocks of the Blue Riverview housing precinct on my right. But being envisioned as a recreational route, I think it serves this purpose alright. The only strange thing here is how the park connector is segregated into pedestrian and cyclist zones every time I'm at the crest of a hill, and then returning into a shared zone at the trough. There's a little deviation here as I pass the back gate of Canberra Secondary School and move closer to the adjacent canalised Sungai Sembawang. This is where the segregated path design creates many issues, as the painted yellow line in the middle deviates a little every time the path routes around some plants next to the canal, perhaps into the track of an oncoming cyclist or runner. Not all park users will follow this detour. With such inconsistent waves, this path is better zoned as a shared path to avoid confusion, unless these canal side trees are removed and made part of the pavement. As I travel towards the Senoko Industrial Estate, I would like to talk a little about the recent history of Senoko. While it was initially developed in the 1970s to provide jobs for Woodlands residents in marine industries such as shipbuilding, it diversified over time, and an extension to the industrial estate was built together with Sembawang New Town in the 2000s, this time for the food sector. The vicinity garnered great controversy in 1994 as 25,000 Singaporeans petitioned the government to conserve 70 hectares of land here for a nature park as a bird sanctuary, during a time when Singapore's countryside was rapidly receding. Well, as you can see here with the housing blocks and factories standing all around, the appeal was unfortunately eventually rejected. Anyways, it would take 12.5 minutes to get from Sembawang MRT station to Admiralty Road West. By bus, well, it will probably take at least 18 minutes or so. The Senoko Industrial Estate currently sees scant traces of cycling infrastructure, which I do find a shame because the truth is that currently, the best places to build cycling paths that result in high usage are industrial estates and not residential towns, since public transport connectivity is much poorer in these places, which will result in an already higher existing cycling modal share. Overall, this has been quite an interesting video looking at the first cycling town in Singapore, placing cyclists and pedestrians on separate tracks. It's not good today, but there will be no other references that can be made in Singapore back in 2008. At around the same time, companies will be trawling on whether pedestrians and cyclists could share the narrow footpaths which they have. Today, for better or worse, the approach is a mixed bag of both. At this point, I'm just heading back to Sembawang MRT station where this video ends. Do leave your thoughts on the cycling network here, and if you are new, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can also support us using the Super Thanks function of YouTube. This is Transit Evolution, signing off.